Hey everybody, this is Francesco Abbruzzino. What we're looking at right now is Syria, so we'll just take a second to look at some of the destruction that has taken place in this once beautiful country. And that's what war does to you, folks. Look at that. Okay, that is indeed a travesty and should have never happened. It was all brought on through some oil issues, I think, over the Syrian pipeline. The Americans, us, our government, Israel, Saudi Arabia, they didn't want that because they're going to lose money. And we're going to talk a little bit. I read an article, we're going to touch on it briefly a little bit later, about shale oil and how the current drive to lower oil pricing is a result of Saudi Arabia being upset over our expansion into the shale oil. I've already given you the perspective of possibly the United States, Saudi Arabia working together to drive down the price of oil in an economic war that they're having with Russia and trying to deprive Russia, because that's their main source of revenue right now with all the sanctions that are taking place. Well, it's always their main source of revenue. All right, so this is Francesco Abbruzzino. This is the Uncensored Report. It's a one-man operation. I do everything from the production of this show to research to the websites, the Scoop websites, the Scoop social media, all that stuff. It's done just by me, myself, and I. It is unedited, unscripted. Basically, I go out, I pull up some documents I want to talk about, and we wing it from there. So, unedited, unscripted, anything can happen. So let's go ahead and get started. I generally look at the general news that's out there, first of all. So let's see what's taking place on the Scoop National News. Let's start with this one. This was interesting. It was a Gitmo detainee. He doesn't want to leave. He's too afraid to leave. So let's take a quick listen to this.
Free to leave Gitmo, but another man slated for release, he actually wants to stick around. A lawyer for Muhammad Ali Abdul Bazwir, a Yemeni tied to Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, reports that he's too scared to go to a country where he doesn't know anything. So for now, he's staying at Guantanamo Bay. The two men released to the Balkans are Al-Qaeda affiliated terrorists, both with explosives training. There are now 91 detainees left.
All right, and that's all in an attempt for Obama to close down Gitmo over the course of this year before he leaves office. And what do we got here? We got Fabens, Texas. The police are searching for this teacher in connection with alleged sexual abuse that has taken place. He's got 2 counts of continuous sexual abuse on a child. So if you know anything, by all means, share that. Share it with everybody. Try to bring this guy down. This is a 16-year-old girl. She's out there explaining her fears with the migrants and how Angela Merkel is essentially destroying the culture, the fabric of society in Germany. Interesting little perspective there from that young lady. Shooting of the Kurds, waving white flags on camera. This is an incident that some people caught. Again, this is the Turks. Turks opened fire. Kurdish militants were among the ranks of civilians that opened fire at the Turks, provoking a response. So check that out. The Turks and Kurds have been going at it for eons, and right now the current battle is it all started when we went into Iraq. They didn't want the Kurds to have their own area, their own statehood. They ended up getting a little autonomous area there. Turks have been cracking down. They just went into Iraq just recently, and essentially Iraq said they invaded them. They went in, they went after some Turk militants there. They're calling them terrorists in Turkey. They're going after them in neighborhoods. They killed over 400 the other day, and that's again, they're called. Some people would refer to the Turks as revolutionaries trying to fight for their freedom. Turkey regards them as terrorists. And then they also went into Saudi Arabia or Syria when they saw they were getting too much land and winning the battles against ISIL, Islamic State. And they started bombing the hell out of them, and the United States let them do it. This is two goofballs, Fluff News, and it's the recording of their 911 call where they turned themselves in because they were too high and they got paranoid and they had 20 pounds of pot. This is just a cute little video of a cow running loose in New York. You don't see that too often. A cow running down the street of New York in Queens. And that was the dash cam from the officer's camera. Let's see what else we got here. Snow Apocalypse 2016. And it is amazing. I saw some pictures, read this article, and I think there's some pictures on that article basically where they're hoarding all this food supply because of the snow apocalypse. And the range is from 1 to 2 feet, or 1 inch to 2 feet. Primarily DC looks like it's going to get hit pretty hard. I know I was watching the news today and I was seeing some of the snow come down. But it's amazing. Put this in perspective. If you look at how all these stores, their shelves are empty. I mean, if you look at the pictures, they're bare. And this is over a snowstorm. Could you ever imagine if we had an EMP attack and we were to lose electricity for a few months, if not a few years? What that would do? It just illustrates how you need to be prepared for this stuff. A thief punches a mother in the face and spits on her stepping in. Here, this is interesting. This is those damn ISIS, and I showed you in the beginning. Hold on. I showed you in the beginning a picture, a video of Syria and all the mass destruction that's taking place there with the civil war that the United States was instrumental in getting in there because we wanted to replace Assad. Now ISIL is in there. ISIL, Al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda, all these moderate groups. The U.S. is essentially backed financially and with military equipment to go in there in an attempt to throw over Assad, and they've just expanded, and it's turned out obviously into something the United States doesn't want. And yesterday, the United States finally gave their soldiers a permission to go ahead and attack ISIL, which was great. Almost 2 years too late, but it was great. This is a historical site, and once again, this is a Christian site. But they've done to this what they've done to so many sites in Iraq and in Syria where they've just destroyed them. So it's pretty sad. Let's listen to the report from Press TV, and I think it shows the destruction too.
Monastery, the Saint Elijah, which lied on a hill near the northern city of Mosul for 1400 years.
They have demolished all the architectural sites in Iraq. This act really reflects the true nature of these terrorist groups who are really completely against human being, completely really against the civilization.
The 27,000 square feet building was built back in 590 AD by an Assyrian Christian monk. The site is especially dear to the world's Chaldean Catholic community and has been a place of pilgrimage for centuries. Daesh has destroyed most of Mosul's ancient monuments.
Daesh is ISIS, that's how they say it over there in Middle East.
Takfiri terrorists designate such places as symbols of blasphemy.
Look at that.
What's more alarming, though,
destruction of all those antiquities.
Items are finding their way to international black markets.
There are international reports which assert that much of the artifacts which have been stolen from Iraq have made their way to the US, the UK and some European countries, and even Israel. This despite the international resolution indicating any involvement in the black market trade of such artifacts.
The terrorists have also destroyed Palmyra's Arch of Triumph in neighboring Syria.
I think all the international peace-loving people should really regard these acts as war crime committed by the ISIS and by the Daesh.
Okay, and it is a travesty what's taking place over there, unfortunately. I don't see an end to it anytime soon, but you know, I did put out a site yesterday, Mosul Eyes, and it's basically communications via Facebook coming from people that are entrapped in Mosul under ISIS or Daesh or ISIL under their control, and they're basically reporting on what the situation is like in there. It was pretty interesting. I shared a video where they're asking for help yesterday, and if I see anything important coming out of the communication on that page, obviously I'll share it again. Let's see, this is This is a police dash cam showing the rescue of a 2-year-old walking down the middle of a busy
The
street.
north city limits of Newport, Oregon, when he discovered a 2-year-old child running down the middle of the highway in his lane of travel. Deputy Gotney quickly came to a stop and rescued the child from the danger of passing motorists. Shortly after removing the child from the highway, Deputy Gotney was alerted to the child's frantic parents who were searching for him. The child was returned to them unharmed.
And not sure how that takes place, but interesting video there. Let's see. Looks like some commentary there too. Denmark announces refugees have brought in diphtheria into the country and all kinds of new diseases that the European Union has not seen for 20 years. There makes you got to sit back and wonder what's might they bring into the United States. Right now, Obama refuses to let states know if they are getting any of these Syrian refugees. Some 10,000 of them right now. And what are they bringing over here with them besides the fact that they're the extremist Sunni religion that 95% of these Syrians are practicing? So it's a little concerning. Listen, this was amazing. We'll listen real quick. It's John Kerry coming out and saying, oh yeah, the $1.7 billion that we're going to release back to Iran, sure, it's probably going to end up in the terrorist hands. And it's like, oh my, what is wrong with these people? But now Congress is trying to move to stop and prevent that $1.7 billion in assets from being unfrozen and given back to Iran. So let's take a quick listen.
That statement. He said, well, so far we're happy that they haven't given it to terror, essentially. Why don't they have restrictions? First of all, the money should have never been given back under any... We should have gotten our prisoners back. We then should have said we're not giving... We owe $19 trillion, Sean. $19 trillion. It's going to be because of that really horrible budget deal that was made 2 weeks ago. It's now going up to $21 trillion very quickly, right? So we owe $21 trillion. Here's a guy that says the money we gave them is going to be used for terror. If that's the case, first of all, why do they give them the money? But second of all, Sean, why didn't they have clauses that it can't go to terror?
And there you go. Excellent points brought up by the Don. Donald Trump out there making some excellent points. And let's see, Detroit. I just thought this was tragic. A 73-year-old man found in the dumpster behind a nursing home. I hate reading stuff like that. Your brain, how it works, and the incredible things that it does while you're sleeping. Not a lot of traction on that story, looks like. Thieves put gun to Ohio 8-year-old's head and steals the hoverboard. This is the society, the horrifying society that we're dealing with nowadays, folks. Another migrant attack, this one in a pool on a child. Basically, this quote up there says, one of them sidled up next to my youngest and had his hands in his underwear. I'm not sure what to say. This baby chance, this incident happened right here in Northport, 15 minutes down the road. And the mother essentially got 25 years. It's a travesty what happened to this. The grandmother, the mother of this daughter that took the plea, says that it's ridiculous. And she said, look, my daughter made a conscious choice. I don't agree with it. Her and her abusive husband got into drugs, and they took it out on this poor child. And now poor baby Chance is paying the price. He's dead, so he's paid the price. This was the first air travel and how it's changed over 46 years with the first Boeing 747 that took off. And this was a picture of it.
At 1:52 in the morning on January 22nd, 1970.
There you go. The first flight. Commercial flight. All right, so let's see what else we got here. Some good stuff out here today. This is a lady that just covers the troubles that she's gone to and her concerns because her son, 18 years old, left home to join ISIS. At one point, he wanted to come back home, but the ISIS recruiter said, nope, you can't. You're here. You're stuck. And she just goes through it. And I'm sure for any mother of any of these ISIL recruits, it's got to just be devastating. Let's see, there are some comments on there. Okay, this is a video report from Leanne McAdoo, and she's out there covering the Flint water crisis, and she's been all over it, reporting about the filthy river there, how politics is coming into play, and everybody's trying to blame each other. The regional EPA official stepped down yesterday from this incident and the horrible handling of it. I talked about this index yesterday, the Baltic Dry Index, and how I was amazed that only one ship, or not one ship, has left from China to the U.S. with any supplies. And what we're going to see is we're going to start to see this slowdown impact us, folks, pretty soon here. And it's going to be a global trade slowdown. And they're predicting this, and they sell this. They predicted this in 87 and 2008 with those crashes, and we're seeing it again. When you're seeing this Baltic dry index, I think it went from 1,400 down to 400. You're seeing that ships are not leaving China with supplies to U.S., where we're one of their biggest importers of it. You got to look at it and say, okay, there's going to be problems here in a month. You know, Walmart can't sell their products. A guy flipping out of a car. Ooh, God. And somehow that guy survived that. He landed right on the hood. That was horrifying. Watch this one more time. You'll see the little spot. Comes down. Boom. Somehow survives that. Amazing. All right. Let's see. What else we got here? China busts 35 restaurants that were using actual opium poppy seed in their seasoning. There's that EPA administrator resigning over the Flint water crisis. The latest issue of the magazine, Isis Magazine, which I found out about the other day, and this individual that I think watches the show and reads my stuff sent me to another document on some of the communications that they've been putting out. It was interesting. But this is their magazine that came out and said, look, we need to start targeting our fellow Muslims, essentially, that are not following the strict adherence to the Muslim, Shia Muslim that we follow, the edicts that we follow. And again, pretty unstable organization. Are implanted chips the future of boarding passes? I hope not. And that was an interesting article, but don't get me going on implants, and maybe we'll cover that someday. New York School says they'll offer change to students' grades made to protect the kids. Protect the kids. New York School says offer to change student grades made to protect the kids. Are you kidding me? If they're not getting educated, you don't change the grade. You fix the system. Former Alaska Airlines pilot. This was in 2014. He flew 2 flights drunk. I don't know why it's all suddenly showing up 2 years later. Marine life. This is a Marine. He got a liver, I believe it was a liver. Yep, a liver transplant from this young lady, and now their hearts are together. Hillary, she denies her emails were hacked. She says it did not happen. And that's contrary to what a ex-CIA or Secret Service guy was, Dan Bon Jovi, he was Secret Service, has stated. North Korea arrested a Virginia University student, saying it was a hostile act towards their country, saying he has ties to the United States government. Not a lot of information's come out of there, unfortunately, and our hearts go out to his family. Somalia attacks, 20 dead after siege at a beachfront restaurant, and yes, you guessed it, they were yelling Abu Akbar. Student suspended for carrying a classmate to the nurse. I read stuff like that and it just makes me, amazes me. Kudos to him for doing the right thing, though, like Lynette just said there. Former Secretary of Defense Robert Gates. Odds are pretty high that Russia and China and Iran have access Hillary's server, which she says never happened. According to Bon Jovi, it did happen. German government admits that it can't find 600,000 of their 1.1 million immigrants. How nice. Amazing. Saudi Arabia saying Islam versus chess. Saudi Arabia coming out and saying you can't play chess anymore. Man eats a meal from 1955. Bubba. Oh, Bubba, Bill Clinton going to campaign in Las Vegas at a porn convention. Nice. Bill, always the classy one. Spend your years at home. What else we got here? I think we're almost done. Q-tips, you shouldn't put them inside your ear, obviously, but somebody came on and said, well, how do you get rid of the wax? What a travesty. I've been tracking this kid for the last couple days. He was lost out in the wilderness, and they found his body. Poor kid. And I started getting worried just yesterday when they said, yeah, he's still missing, and it had been a few days, and it's cold. He's out in this area that was pretty cold. And I started doubting that we would see him alive, and always sad when we lose a young life like that. And that's that Congress move to block the $1.7 billion of taxpayer-funded money over to Iran. The man who threw a baby across the room and into a TV cabinet got 15 years. What a punk. Look at him. Amazing what these guys are doing. How about this? An illegal immigrant, bound a 3-year-old girl with duct tape, stuffed her in a trash bag, put her in a closet of feces, and then offered her up for sex. What is wrong with these people? You see this stuff on a daily basis. Morphine found in cough syrup. How did morphine get in cough syrup? You got to ask yourself that one. All right, and these are some of the news. Minimum wage, we're going to actually try to touch on that today and how the bike. This is at Mosul I, where they're asking for help. Let's take a quick listen.
Followers. It has been a year and a half since the occupation of ISIS to my hometown, Mosul. The crimes they have committed by the application of their barbarian laws are unspoken of, from killing, raping, stoning, displacement, and slaughtering. We have registered more than 6,000 executions in Mosul. We want you to know that every day passes by, we die in fear and starvation. ISIS is turning our children into monsters and killing machines. We call unto you to help us to get rid of the oppression of ISIS. We speak to your hearts and minds. We speak to your wisdom to think about the future of children and women.
And that's just a travesty what ISIL is doing over there in the Middle East to Libya, Iraq, and Syria, and they're trying to penetrate into Afghanistan now. You could just hear the sorrow in that young lady's eyes. And interesting sight, Mosul I, and they got someone that's underground essentially there communicating about what's happening in there. So that's enough news. Let's go ahead and talk about, I think we spent too much time on it. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the other stuff where this is the segment where I opine a little bit more into detail and stuff. Now, I've been all over the place, hitting the financial markets a lot. Market looks like it's going to be up today, so we're going to avoid bashing on the market today. Although it's still not going to go anywhere. It's got a long ways to go before it's back up, and I foresee that it's going to continue to drop. You got to have those up days, though. I'm going to hit a little bit on the whole Democratic process, the liberals, the Democrats, and what they have going for them. The whole Bernie Hillary thing. I may spend too much time on it, but this is one of the few times that I spend a lot of political time on issues. I do talk about politics, and I bring my views, my political views, right, into some of the subjects, but I don't normally dive into it like we are here. And we're going to talk about the Democrats, the Bernie versus Hillary, and the socialist view that they're having, and how the whole socialism view or ideology is gaining momentum within the Democratic Party. And they've always had this left-leaning, this socialist-leaning bend to their ideology. But Bernie Sanders has come out and he's had enough integrity to say, I am a socialist. That's what you're getting with me. Whereas Hillary is more of what they call a closet socialist. And she mentions Sanders as an avowed socialist, and as a way to try to induce others to laugh and minimize the fact that he is this, and a negative connotation. And Clinton deserves just as much credit as Sanders for Sanders' surge, because it's helping him in the way she's going about handling this whole affair. Pretty much anyone stands a chance against Hillary. I mean, and we're seeing that now with someone that's coming out and openly saying, I'm a socialist. She's got so many scandals under her belt. So many. We got the email. We got the Benghazi. And the list just goes on and on. Her attitude about sexual assaults. You know, many of the people on the left, the progressives, their overall attitude towards sexual assaults has changed, and they don't view Bill as positively as Hillary was hoping. And they are seeing this as a thorough and damning recap of Bill Clinton's rape accusations, his sexual history, and it's not shining a bright light on Hillary at all. It's not shining that bright light that she had hoped that it would. And the fact is that a significant number of Americans would truly consider electing this socialist, an outright socialist, as the leader of our free world. And it's, if you're like me, you gotta come on. Some will find it outrageous. But is it a precursor to American history? You know, if we look at how Sanders is out there and he's peddling his socialist wares, he's invoking FDR, the big deal, restore faith in government. You could even come out and say that Mussolini did stuff like that. But Sanders, democratic socialism is nothing more than Marxist socialism. And he's just repackaging it so that he can sell his goods. He wants a centrally planned economy that's directed by a dominant socialist party, his party, the Democrats, and they control the economic production, and they do this vis-a-vis the taxation, regulation, income redistribution, which essentially fits Sanders to the T. His view of a government-defined and government-run nation essentially flies in the face of liberty. Flies in the face of liberty as expressed in our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. You know, free health care for everybody. Free college. Give it all out. Free colleges. Free government-run child care. It all sounds good. But how are you going to pay for it? These free things that they're all offering are a little expensive. How is he going to pay for this free stuff? With all this stuff he's been offering, the total amount came out to just under $20 trillion in new taxes over the next 10 years. And that's about a 47% overall increase on the burden that you're going to feel at your home. And this type of insanity, this type of logic, it's crazy. But people are buying into it. They hear free healthcare, free childcare, free this, free that. Just like Obama came in and wanted to change America, offering all this free stuff. And society bought into it. But how are you going to pay for it? We're seeing right now how damaging this free Obamacare is. You know, Sanders will come out and say, look, we're going to get the rich to pay for this. They're going to pay their fair share. But if you look at his whole menu of tax hikes that he plans on throwing on the rich, poor, everywhere, it's not just going to the rich, folks. And he wants to tax business healthcare premium taxes. That's going to be about $6 trillion. He wants to end tax breaks for employee health insurance. That's $3 trillion. Individual healthcare premium tax, $2 trillion. A death tax, $243 billion. Energy tax, $135 billion. And the list goes on. And you can't be so naive that you're hearing free, and you're going to buy this, because if you heard what I was just saying, you're going to get it taxed on the back end. And despite all the rhetoric that's coming out of Sanders, his taxes would hit the regular worker, the business owner, the energy consumer, everybody. His death tax, even dying won't rescue you from the grasp of the socialist Bernie. Sanders' revenue estimates are highly, highly questionable. But where he does succeed, and he completely dismantles the economy through taxing us into oblivion. Do we want to be the next France? Do you want to be on the? Do you want to put out $19 trillion over 10 years to give everybody all this stuff for free? How are you going to pay that $19 trillion? But that doesn't stop old Bernie. Bernie continues to trawl through, as most socialists would. He plows through. He wants to sell America on the brand of socialism. His frankness is winning over the Democrats. They believe this guy's honest. He's credible. And he shifted that whole Democratic primary debate. Some would say for the better, some would say for the worse. The Democrats have fallen a long way from Bill. The era of big government is over. And that's what Clinton says. But I don't know if it is. I mean, to me, it seems like governors expanded for years. It won't be over until you get a Republican in there, hopefully. I shouldn't say Republican, because a lot of Republicans are just like the Democrats. You need a libertarian in there, which won't happen anytime soon. And I think Don might be the closest thing to it, if he's being upfront and honest with everything he's communicating. But old Hillary's got a problem, and the Democratic Party has a problem with this guy, this Bernie Sanders. He's coming here, I think, tomorrow to Sarasota. And what it is this Bernie Sanders he's a pariah. His candidacy has essentially transformed into this great phenomena, just like Trump's has transformed into this great phenomena. Establishment liberals maintain the U.S. Senator from Vermont shouldn't be considered a serious candidate, just like the Republicans state that Trump shouldn't be considered a serious candidate. You had Lowry from the National Review coming out and saying that this just yesterday. And he was part of the moderation team for the next debate. And they said, look, you can't come out and say that and be on this moderation table, so they kicked them off. And the Democrats essentially fear what might actually stands in their way. They fear what Bernie is bringing to the table. They fear that Bernie's might get citizens to vote their conscience. And they can no longer be dismissive of old Bernie. And, you know, you got Hillary Clinton. She's out there. Her supporters that are out there. They're starting to get nervous. They're starting to sweat. The rhetoric is heating up. The liberal class disposal of the most independent, courageous members has long been part of their whole pathology. After World War I, especially after World War II, corporations gradually sought more and more control of the state. Corporations now hold government completely captive. And Bernie is bringing this to everyone's attention. And those in power, like these liberals, expect to police others on the left who would threaten their supremacy. So when you get this political elite like Clinton, like the Bushes, and they're facing this formidable opponent, in this case a liberal, extreme liberal, you get the pundits out there that wittingly, or unwittingly for that matter, devise arguments for what Americans should vote against their interest and support someone who would likely manage government in a manner suitable for a corporate state. Citizens, you know, they're not managers of democracy. We go out, we vote. We don't have a political strategy out there. We don't look at the electability of someone. After voting, we participate in return of direct action, and through grassroots organizations, we can grow movements. We can do all that stuff on the ground, which is what is essentially working for Bernie right now. And he's posing this enormous obstacle. And most Americans are accepting. They're opening their arms to this socialistic view that he's having. It's not getting negatively accepted as the Clintons had hoped. And most Americans think, hey, the wealthy pay little federal taxes. So yeah, we'll take a tax hike. But they don't realize it's going to hit them. Majority support the single payer system that he's pushing. They support expanding Social Security. They support a lot of the communications that Bernie's putting out, and it's great. They're all great ideas, and I get that we have a society that needs this stuff, but there's no money to pay for it. And just like Obamacare, it's going to have a negative impact, and you're feeling that now. And Democrats, for the last 8 years, have been protecting capitalism from the populist calls for reform. And this whole Obamacare is a prime example where Medicare for all was immediately taken off the table, and the political party manipulated all of us into believing requiring private insurance companies to offer insurance to all consumers was the best thing that they could go out and do, the best thing they could accomplish. But it's turned out that it hasn't been. So regardless, needless to say, Hillary's in panic mode. Just like old Jeb's in panic mode. I saw an ad today that he just put out where his mom was on there saying how Jeb's such a good kid. And, you know, the question isn't really what's wrong with Bernie. You know, Bernie's soaring. Nothing's wrong with him. The question is what's wrong with old Hillary. She's got that name recognition, unparalleled experience, support of big money. She's got so much money and so much coming in that she's scared off many of the potential candidates for that Democrat seat. And now she's sending her firing squads after old man Bernie. Because a lot of people are starting to see a lot of that baggage that Clinton carries. You know, on the other side, you got Bernie, who's running essentially a grassroots campaign through social media. He's collecting small amounts of money. His attack ad, which I think came out today too, was essentially just bringing up the fact that Hillary is financed by big banksters. And he's taken a totally different approach. And you know, that revelation about the $600,000 that Clinton took in this speaking fee is starting to hit her in the whole credibility thing. And you know, let's just talk about the email. You know, you got to sit here and just ask yourself, why in God's name isn't this lady, this witch of Eden, in jail? Why aren't we seeing her in handcuffs walking the perp walk? If any of us did this, we would be arrested, indicted, and locked up in prison. But not this lady. She's out there denying it, smiling, and saying nothing's going to happen. And the bottom line is she failed to safeguard this stuff, and there's overwhelming damning information against her. Let me see. I think I got this video. Let me see if I can cue it up. All right, we're going to cue this video up real quick with Megyn Kelly covering this. And let me get you guys to a full screen, and we'll be right back.
New fallout from reporting we brought you on dozens of top-secret emails found on Hillary Clinton's server. A new report indicates that some of the emails contained information about controversial drone strikes. This is the stuff that's even more secret than top secret. And earlier tonight, the Weekly Standard's Stephen Hayes said if anyone else had information like that, he's being told by professionals they would not be treated with kid gloves.
I talked to 3 national security lawyers who deal with this for a living. I mean, this is all they do today. And they all said, without exception, there's no question this person would have lost her clearances if this were a senior GS 14 or 15 employee, probably would have lost his or her job, and possibly would have already been indicted.
Judge Andrew Napolitano is our Fox News senior judicial analyst. Do you agree with that?
I do. I would actually go a couple of steps further than Steve and suggest that Mrs. Clinton should be consulting very high-powered national security criminal defense lawyers, that is, criminal defense lawyers who have national security clearances so they can see the evidence against her, to negotiate with the FBI, because the case against her is overwhelming, damning, and from her perspective, grave. And when she says there's no there, when she laughs about it, when she says this is the re-suggesting of an old New York Times story, she's effectively mocking the 100 FBI agents that are investigating.
Even today, she said that she never sent or received classified information.
That infuriates me, Megyn, because that's a word game when she says, I neither sent nor received anything marked classified. I'm making the quotation marks with my fingers, because nothing is marked classified. It is marked confidential, secret, top secret. And under top secret, there are 4 submarkings, the most sensitive of which is this.
And you can see the rest of that on my site if you want to. You guys have to be the judge. I know I personally, I will not be voting for a Democrat. I will not be voting for Hillary. I will not be voting for Bernie. What I haven't decided is who I will be voting for. I haven't come to that conclusion yet. Nobody really gets me going. I'm not a fan of Cruz. Cruz, for some reason, I think he's more divisive than anything, especially when he gets in that Congress. And you're seeing news come out now where a lot of people just don't like him. Plus that whole citizens thing. Rubio is just a joke. He's a Republican establishment, same GOP establishment, just like Jeb Bush. And it leaves Trump. And Trump's got that personality. He says a lot of the right stuff. But the thing is Trump doesn't hit on things. He's very general about stuff. And it's worrisome, just like Obama. Obama had that electrifying personality that captured the imagination of a lot of people, and they went with him for his change that he sold everybody on. And they got this major socialist, which if you dove into his stuff, you would come to expect that. I'm starting to feel, I feel that way with Donald. I want to know where he stands on the issues, and he hasn't quite communicated all that, at least to my satisfaction. And that's where I stand with it. Just did want to talk briefly about that whole oil thing. And this was an article that came out, and it gave a whole different perspective. And I think I mentioned it earlier at the beginning of the show. How Saudi Arabia is driving down the prices to impact damage on the United States for our expansion in the shale. And it was a very interesting article, and they essentially called it a war between Obama and Saudi Arabia, and how Obama has his media minions basically going out there and helping him to fight this fight out there. And Saudi Arabia has been determined to wage essentially what this article deemed all-out war against the American shale and energy exploration industry, which I get. I read this and I'm like, that's possible because we found all this shale oil and we don't need as much from Saudi Arabia. We're freeing up sanctions on Iran, which is releasing 500,000 barrels of oil, and they hope to get it to 1 million within a year. So I get why this war is being waged. And it's, we decided in America, we have been innovative like we always are. We had our innovators go out there, our risk takers, and they went out and they produced this new revolution, this oil business, and it's cut into Saudi Arabia's market share, and they got a little scared. Them and the whole OPEC organization. OPEC was founded back in Baghdad back in the 60s by a few countries. They're essentially a cartel, and they basically go out there and monopolize the market. We look forward, take a look at them. We've learned that OPEC has been overproducing oil to drive down American shale, and that's how the perspective that this article took. And they're doing this because their share of the global oil market has shrunk from 60% down to 40%, and that's due to the production of shale out of America. Interesting perspective. And the low oil prices are great for Americans. We're loving it. We love going to the pump. I love the fact that it only cost me, $1.89 for premium gas. Obama loves it. He's up there bragging about it at a State of Union about the job creations. But as I covered yesterday, there's been a tremendous amount of layoffs in the oil industries, with 43 of them going bankrupt. But after that, Obama essentially did a 180. He wants to push for change in the way we manage our coal and oil, shutting down the coal industry essentially. The EPA has already issued 3 regulations, and they're designed to shut down the fossil fuel production in the United States. And Obama is doing exactly what the Saudi oil sheiks are trying to do, which is shut down fracking in America. And a lot of people are concerned about that. The number of shale rigs, and this was interesting, this came out of that article, that there's been more than 100,000 jobs gone due to all this, the tightening regulations, the war, if you want, Saudi Arabia war oil. The number of shale rigs and services collapsed by 60%. And what that's doing is the banks are getting worried now because their loans, the people are going to start defaulting on them. The states are worried. They're starting to adjust for the budget shortfalls. And that's about $200 billion of oil and gas assets that worldwide that are just up in smoke, poof, gone. And so in the short term, it's good for a lot of us, like I said, at the gas pump. But in the long term, it's going to not be successful. It's going to be successful for Audis and the Saudis, and will once again be dependent upon their foreign oil because Obama's closing down all this fossil fuel here. And he's also out there closing federal lands to production and regulation. But you don't hear too much about that. You hear the speech that he spits out, and people buy into it. And they say, you know what, this is a great guy. This is what we want. This is awesome. And I would love to be able to go out and speak about something and have people buy into it without ever having to disclose the actual facts. Well, he actually discloses them. It's just that American people don't know where to look. Let's see. We got about 15 minutes. I wanted to talk about the minimum wage real quick too. And I've never been an advocate of increasing it. Not because I don't want people to have better jobs, better paying jobs, a better life, but because I'm a business owner. And I know increasing it from here in Florida, $8.05 to $15 an hour, will destroy many small businesses, and many large for that matter. And they're starting to get this report came out, and they started getting all this employment data in from the major cities out there. And they got it from 6 cities, and they talk about when the price of something essentially increases, there'd be less demand for it, which is what we're seeing. So they looked at this analysis, and they looked at Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, and D.C. In Chicago, they found that the leisure and hospitality sector have slumped to a 5-year low in employment. And that's just last July, they implemented a boost to $10 an hour. San Francisco, job growth has hit a 5-year low. They mandated, San Francisco and Oakland, mandated an increase in the wage just last spring. LA, job growth in LA's accommodation industry went negative after minimum wage to $15.37 an hour. You saw the same thing with the progressives in Seattle. Minimum wage went from $9.47 to $11 last April. Restaurant job gains fell 2% for the first time since 2010. And then DC, which this report said had the most, shows the most evidence of the negative impact of it. And their leisure and hospitality employment, which was on a steady rise of about 3% annually for the last 4 years, fell an average of 1%. And it got so that they actually, instead of adding 2,000 jobs, they lost 700 jobs in the industry. And they're just saying, so you look at all this preliminary address or evidence from like DC, and you see the effect that raising minimum wage is having on the businesses. And it's just like I've been saying on this show for the last couple of years. And, you implement these measures to help these low-skilled employees to improve their circumstances. And I get that, and I want that. But the opposite, I could have told you the opposite was going to happen. The writing's on the walls. I mean, think of it. You're a business owner. You have few options. You can either eat the increase yourself, and a lot of these guys just don't have enough profit revenue to eat it themselves. They can try to reduce their profitability, same situation. They can lose money below break even, which isn't going to happen, or they can raise their prices, but then they're going to lose business because they're going to have to, less people will come in if they raise their prices, they feel. They can cut back on their staff. That's generally what they're doing. And so you got to always be careful of what you ask for. And, it's not just the minimum wage. I get the poor being screwed. And another interesting article I came across yesterday, I think it was Common Dreams, and they talk about courts in the United States and how they're systematically just failing the poor, low-income individuals. And they're doing this with these financial companies out there. This happened to my friend. I think a local. I think I've talked about this before. A local hospital was having financial issues, and they just bought this one local hospital. The company decided, let's lump all these bills together and file suit. And I checked it. I went down to the Sarasota County. I checked the records, and they have a ton of these small claim suits. And basically, my buddy was one of them, and he's like, we paid this bill, but there's no documentation because of the changeover in ownership or something like that. And he said, you know what, Frank, I could have fought it and paid out about $3,000, or I could have just paid the $900 bill. I just paid it, and that's what they're hoping for. So you get these people, there was this in-depth investigation out there that they went out, Human Rights Watch, and looked into, and they scrutinized how courts handle all these thousands of lawsuits that are being brought by these financial companies that go out and they buy up all this debt, and they go out there and push and threaten to sue you. And, they might buy it up for a penny on the dollar and settle for 5 cents on the dollar, and they're making a clean profit. And the courts are out there, they're just rubber stamping these lawsuits. People are bringing it, there's no due diligence, and they're lacking any protection or rights for the individuals, and the courts are like, let's just go with it. And rubber stamping, like I said, the debt suits. And it's threatening the poor. That's essentially who it's going after. This particular individual's in a rough spot right now. He's unemployed, he's got a ton of bills from his. I don't want to cover his whole story, but he's not in the situation to be doing and handling this right now. And this whole scale of the debt buying industry is hard to overstate. You know, the nation's leading debt buyer firm is Encore Capital. And they claim that every 1 out of every 5 people in the U.S., consumers, owe them money in the past. So you get these large companies that are out there, and this should be a serious concern to you. It's a serious concern to me. How they're out there. They're buying this debt lawsuits up. They're going out and putting these frivolous lawsuits out there. And the practices of these companies are deeply concerning. And the fact that it's constantly allowed by these judges who rubber stamp it is even more concerning. You know, in most cases, the debtors are on the right side of the law, but they can't defend themselves. The poor, they don't have the resources available. They're struggling to pay utility bills, struggling to buy food. They're worried about just meeting their daily needs. And then you have these big companies that are coming in and doing stuff like this, and it is a travesty. It is a travesty, folks. All right, I think we're going to end it on there. I did want to talk about the GE mosquitoes because they're releasing them here in Florida. And I didn't have time. I got a few minutes. I can maybe talk about it, but basically they released them down in Brazil, and you're already seeing elevated levels of human disease ever since they've released these genetically engineered mosquitoes, and they're releasing them here in Florida without any real trial. They don't know the impact that they will have on the environment. And in Brazil, where they've been a major target of this experiment, you got dengue fever carried by mosquitoes. That's what they're trying to target. They're trying to wipe it out. But the original idea of the dengue fever in humans was accomplished with what they call PCR test. And people said that PCR test, there was a problem with how it was administered. And it doesn't accurately calculate stuff out. So the entire basis for dengue fever being the case for introducing GE mosquito campaign, it is a little faulty. It's not good science. And basically, it was unnecessary. And you always gotta be concerned when the government is so quick to go out there and release a Frankenstein mosquito on society without truly testing it, without knowing the true impact of it. Wherever GE mosquitoes have been introduced, the human population has not been consulted. The governments and the local governments and corporate edicts are just being pushed down the people's throats. Nobody knows about it. You're essentially becoming a human experiment on a grand scale. And it's disheartening. It's disheartening. All right. I just briefly wanted to touch on that because I saw this article and it was driving me crazy about GE. I've actually been covering it for a few months, and I think the release actually already has taken place down in the Keys. I believe. I could be wrong. All right. This is Friday. Everybody have a great weekend. I know it's going to be snowing like crazy up north. Hopefully, it's a good thing for me. Hopefully, you're sitting there watching this. Here in Venice, I think it's only going to be in the 50s tomorrow and windy, so it's going to be pretty chilly for us folks here in Venice. I know rain out there right now, some wind, and temperatures are supposed to drop. So it's not the kind of weekend where you're going to hang out in the sun in Florida, but I will be at the beach, probably surfing. So it's a good thing for me. This has been, I want you to go to the Uncensored Report, check out my stories. Those are the stories that I like and enjoy without all the fluff. And check out Longevity for your minerals and vitamins. And that's it. Have a great weekend. Remember to get out there, meet people, educate, inspire, and affect change in your community. That's what got me started. It's great. It's great, folks. It's great when you're one person like myself, and I can reach, I think I'm up to 800,000 a week. So over 3 million people a month are being reached by one person. And it started just here locally. All right, this has been Francesco Abbruzzino with the Uncensored Report. Everybody have a great day. I'll see you later.